You must now be extremely cautious about your financial situation. Today, our focus is on a subject that sounds technical, but touches the core of your daily life: stagflation. Let me begin by clarifying what this word really means, because understanding it is the key to navigating what lies ahead. The first part, stag, comes from the word stagnant. Think about a stagnant pool of water. Doesn't move, it doesn't change. It just sits there, breeding decay. A stagnant economy works in the same way. It stalls, it refuses to grow, and it leaves millions of people stuck. That's what happens when jobs disappear, when layoffs spread, and when factories cut back production. And that, unfortunately, is exactly where we are right now in the United States. Worse still, nearly every serious observer believes it will decline further before there's any improvement. We are entering a season of stagnation, but stagnation is only half the story. At the same time, prices are climbing higher. This is inflation. On rare occasions, the economy seems to give us a painful choice. Sometimes it's stagnation bad enough, but at least prices remain steady. Other times, it's inflation still bad, but at least jobs are available. Yet when capitalism is poorly managed, when business leaders and government officials make destructive decisions, both disasters collide. We end up with two negatives at once: stagnation and inflation. Together, that's stagflation. And that is the dangerous path we are now heading down into the autumn of 2025 and into the winter of 2026. What I want to do with you here is explore why this is happening, what it means for your daily life, and how you can understand it clearly enough that you're not crushed by the confusion. So, where does stagnation really come from? The answer lies partly in the built-in nature of capitalism as an economic system, and partly in the specific circumstances we face today. Let's begin with the general point. Capitalism, for over 300 years, first in England, then spreading through Europe and eventually across the globe, has carried within it a regular rhythm of collapse. On average, every 4 to 7 years, downturns occur. The truth is, this system is profoundly unstable. Imagine if your roommate or spouse behaved with the same level of instability. Would have walked away long ago. Every 4 to 7 years, millions of workers are abruptly tossed out of their jobs. Businesses shutter or scale down. Governments, deprived of tax revenues, cut back public services. The cycle devastates families and communities. And here's the thing: these crises come right on schedule. Think back. In the spring of 2000, we faced the dot-com crash. In 2008, it was the subprime mortgage collapse. In 2020, the COVID crisis hit, sending shockwaves through the global economy. Each one roughly 4 to 7 years apart, just as the pattern predicts. Each one inflicted enormous pain. Some were devastating, others catastrophic. And today we are again approaching the point where another downturn is not only likely, but almost inevitable. How do I know? The financial press is full of warnings. The Wall Street Journal, The Economist. The Financial Times, none are radical publications, but all now acknowledge what's coming. Why? Because the last major crash was in 2020, and here we are, 5.5 years later, well within the 4 to 7 year window. Maybe the crash won't hit this month or next, but make no mistake, it is coming. And when we look at the latest numbers, the indicators are moving in the wrong direction faster than most predicted. Take unemployment. The official rate today is 4.3%. That may sound modest, but let's put it in perspective. With 160 million people in the labor force, 4.3% means over 7 million people are actively looking for work and cannot find it. At the same time, the Federal Reserve reports that 25 to 30% of our productive capacities, machines, factory floors, retail spaces, sitting idle. Think about that contradiction. We have millions eager to work. We have tools and resources ready. We have urgent social needs for goods and services. Yet somehow, under capitalism, these pieces never come together. That is the structural reason stagflation happens. The system itself refuses to connect workers, equipment, and needs. It is built in. But there are also particular reasons we are experiencing this right now. Much of it traces back to the policies of the Trump administration. And at the top of that list are tariffs. The global economy is more interlinked than ever before. A larger and larger share of the goods you buy, whether clothing, electronics, or even groceries either, comes from abroad or is built from imported components. The same holds true everywhere else in the world. When the US government imposes tariffs on imports, it is directly interfering with this global flow. In earlier decades, secessionist Republicans preached the gospel of non-interference. Government should not meddle in the sacred free market. But when Mr. Trump came to power, that doctrine was tossed aside. Tariffs appeared everywhere, with Republicans suddenly towing the line, and the result: foreign producers no longer knew what to expect from the US market. Exporters of French wine, Japanese electronics, or Brazilian coffee saw their costs rise unpredictably, as tariffs were imposed one week, rolled back the next, cut in half after that, and doubled soon after. No business can plan production or investment under such chaos, and so, naturally, they shifted their focus. They redirected sales away from the United States toward markets that seemed more stable and predictable. And here is the key. The United States no longer dominates the global economy as it once did. Other regions, Europe, Asia, and especially China, offer enormous, reliable demand. Global producers know they can thrive without the US market. The chief beneficiary of this realignment has been China, which has stepped in to absorb business. We are losing. Meanwhile, instability spreads across our domestic economy. Tariffs feed directly into consumer prices, driving up the cost of everyday goods. Mr. Trump may claim foreign companies promise to move production to the United States, but promises are not the same as investments. Add to this the ICE raids on South Korean workers at a battery plant in Georgia, and the signal sent to international investors is unmistakable. Don't come here. Why risk millions in capital when your workforce could be arrested overnight? Not surprisingly, investments are drying up, businesses hesitate, and jobs are disappearing. That is stagnation in real time. Now, let's turn to inflation. Prices in recent years rose as high as 8 or 9%. Today, we celebrate bringing inflation down to 3%. But don't be fooled. That 3% comes on top of the already higher prices that never receded. In other words, the baseline cost of living is permanently higher, and each additional increase makes it worse. Walk into any supermarket or department store, and you see the reality. Shelves are full, but shoppers feel their hearts sink because they simply cannot afford much of what they see. A Bloomberg study released September 16th revealed a stark picture. Half of all consumer spending in the US comes from just the richest 10% of households. The other 90%, the vast majority of Americans, count for the other half. Put plainly, half of the economy is sustained by a tiny minority at the top. No wonder businesses increasingly cater to them with elegant stores, premium services, and personalized attention. Meanwhile, the majority struggles to get by. This explains why the wealthy cheer the booming economy and soaring stock market, while most of the population feels left behind. Both views are true, but only one reflects the experience of the majority. If you feel the economy isn't working for you, you're right. The glowing optimism at the top does not reflect your reality. As an economist, I can confirm, conditions for the bottom 90% are worsening and worsening quickly. So, who bears responsibility for this double burden of stagnation and inflation? The answer is clear: the employer class. Employers decide whether jobs are created or eliminated. They take credit when hiring expands. Therefore, they must also accept blame when it contracts. For months now, they have slowed or frozen hiring. Employers also decide where factories are located, whether in the US or abroad. According to census data, employers make up just 3% of the population. The other 97% are not employers, yet decisions about jobs, wages, and livelihoods rest entirely with that small fraction. Prices, too, are set by employers, not workers. The cost of cereal, tires, or software is determined by those at the top, and they always set prices to maximize profit. If fewer people can afford a product, they may not care, so long as wealthier customers are willing to pay more. This means the employer class controls both ends of the economic chain, whether you have income and how much you must spend to survive. They squeeze you coming and going. That is the essence of capitalism, is a system designed by and for capitalists. Another word for capitalists, employers. And, unless you are one of them, you are not in the group that runs the show. Could good fortune somehow deliver a positive outcome for Mr. Trump, despite all this? Theoretically, yes. But the probability is slim. Far more likely, we are headed for disaster. Which is why my advice to every working man and woman is urgent. Be very careful about your finances. Avoid major new expenses unless absolutely necessary. Save where you can. Prepare for turbulence. Because the risks are higher recession, perhaps later this year or early next, as even Wall Street now predicts. Inflation may rise again. The worst possibility is a combination of both, which is stagflation. And all of these outcomes are destructive for working families. And here is one final point to consider. For 70 years, Americans have been promised the American dream. Study hard, work diligently, and you'll secure a home, a car, vacations, and a secure family life. Yet millions now see that dream slipping out of reach. If another economic crisis strikes, especially one on the scale of 2008-9 or the 2020 pandemic downturn, fallout will land on a population already stressed and disillusioned. And when people are squeezed economically while being denied their promised future, political and ideological upheaval is sure to follow.